Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. Growing up, my life wasn't exactly picture perfect. My parents divorced when I was just a kid. My mom struggled with alcohol, and my dad ended up marrying my stepmother not long after. When my dad remarried, I thought it might bring some stability, maybe even some semblance of family unity. Instead, it brought chaos, tension, and Bella. Bella, my stepsister, was 1 year older than me, and from day one, she seemed determined to prove that I was inferior. While my stepmother saw Bella as the second coming of Aphrodite, I just saw her as an insufferable bully who got away with anything and everything. Bella's beauty was a family legend. My stepmother wouldn't shut up about it. "Look at her. Isn't she stunning?" she'd say as Bella flounced into the room. "She's got the looks of a movie star." That might have been hearable if Bella had been kind. But she wasn't. She was spoiled, entitled, and, let's be real, an expert manipulator. Every compliment Bella received only inflated her ego more. If she wasn't being adored, she assumed people were jealous. When I called her out on her rude comments, it wasn't because she was being awful. It was because I must be envious of her flawless face and perfect hair. Whenever Bella was caught lying or throwing tantrums, my stepmother would sweep it under the rug. After all, Bella was beautiful, and apparently, that excused everything from skipping chores to having a string of boyfriends she treated like accessories. Meanwhile, I kept my head down. I worked hard in school, got a job, and tried to build a foundation for my future. I wasn't flashy, I didn't demand attention, and I wasn't out there collecting admirers. I wasn't blowing up relationships, borrowing money I couldn't repay, or starting fights just to stay in the spotlight. I had a steady job, a healthy social circle, and a future I was proud of. And then came the engagement. Bella met Derek, a guy who seemed, at first, like a genuine, grounded person. He had a steady career, a nice personality, and a calm demeanor. I couldn't understand what he saw in Bella, but hey, love is weird, and I guess opposites attract. Bella paraded him around like a trophy. She made sure everyone knew that Derek wasn't just some random guy. He was successful, adoring, and willing to spend whatever it took to make her happy. When they announced their engagement, I smiled and congratulated them, hoping against hope that maybe this would mark the start of Bella calming down and finding some kind of purpose. It was wishful thinking. The wedding plans were extravagant. Bella insisted on the most expensive venue, the most lavish decorations, and a designer gown that would make Cinderella weep. Who paid for all of it? Derek, of course. Bella didn't have a job. Why would she, when she had her beauty and Derek's wallet? Every time my stepmother gushed about how wonderful Derek was for covering all the costs, I felt the urge to ask if she thought he'd adopted Bella along the way. And then came the accusation. About a month before the wedding, Bella called me, not to share exciting updates or ask about my dress for the ceremony, but to accuse me of flirting with Derek. She claimed she'd seen how I looked at him and that I was obviously trying to steal him. Me, flirting with Derek, a man I barely spoke to, who was clearly head over heels for Bella. It was absurd. I told her she was way off base, that I'd never had any interest in Derek, but she wouldn't listen. She said she didn't trust me and disinvited me from the wedding. She told me to stay away from her, Derek, and the entire event. Fine, I wasn't going to beg for an invitation. If Bella didn't want me there, so be it. I wished them well and stayed home on the big day. And what a big day it was, an over-the-top celebration that cost a small fortune. Bella strutted around in her custom gown, the decorations sparkled, and guests drank champagne that probably cost more than my car payment. Derek paid for every last detail. And then it all fell apart. Just weeks later, Derek filed for divorce. Turns out, he'd caught Bella kissing his best friend at the wedding reception. Derek was understandably livid. He wasted no time dumping her, but since they were married, it wasn't as simple as walking away. Court proceedings followed, and the final judgment came down. Bella was responsible for paying half of the wedding costs. After all, she was the one who ended the marriage almost before it started. The problem? Bella had no job, no savings, and no backup plan. She turned to my stepmother, who promptly turned to me. "You need to help Bella," she said. "You're her sister, and sisters take care of each other." I reminded her that Bella had made it abundantly clear she didn't consider me family when she accused me of flirting with Derek and disinvited me out of the wedding. But my stepmother wasn't hearing it. "You need to understand her. Derek is handsome and successful, so Bella might have felt a little bit insecure." Insecure? According to them two, she's the most beautiful girl in the world. Stepmother continued trying to convince me to help. "You have a good job, a steady income," she said. "Me and your father are living from paycheck to paycheck, so it's your obligation to help your family." Help my family? Bella had never treated me like family. She'd treated me like a convenient punching bag. She disinvited me from her wedding over a baseless accusation. And now, because she'd managed to blow up her marriage in record time, I was supposed to swoop in and bail her out? I couldn't believe the nerve. So I laughed. I actually laughed. I told my stepmother, "Sure, I'll help, just as soon as I can eat, drink, and dance at Bella's wedding." She was furious. She launched into a tirade about how ungrateful I was, how jealous I'd always been of Bella's beauty and charm. She told me I was being selfish, that I'm getting my revenge on them because I'm jealous, etc. Then she threw in the kicker. If I didn't help Bella, she'd leave my dad, and he can go be with my alcoholic mother. Maybe that's when I'm going to be finally happy. I'd had enough. Bella had spent years treating me like dirt, accusing me of nonsense, and now she expected me to throw money at her problems? No, just no. Am I the a-hole for standing my ground and refusing to bail her out? OP is not the a-hole. Bella sounds like the textbook definition of entitled, and OP's stepmother has been enabling her from day one. OP is not obligated to bail her out of a mess she created, especially after she disinvited OP from the wedding and accused OP of something so ridiculous. Good on OP for standing her ground. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. She kicked you out of her wedding over a fake accusation, then blew up her marriage all on her own. And now everyone expects you to foot the bill? The audacity is unreal. Bella and your stepmother need to learn that actions have consequences. You're not a personal ATM. Not the a-hole. Bella wanted to cut you out of her big day, so you're just honoring her wishes by staying out of the aftermath. It's amazing how quickly they want to claim you as family when they need money. Hold firm. You don't owe them a dime. Not the a-hole. Bella's choices and her stepmother's constant enabling led to this situation. You've worked hard for what you have. You don't owe anything to someone who's treated you so poorly and then expects you to rescue them. Let her figure out her own mess. Update. Well, it's official. My dad decided to get in on the act. He came over the other day looking more stressed than I've seen him in years. Turns out, my stepmother has been threatening to divorce him if I don't step up and help my poor, innocent stepsister pay off her share of the wedding fiasco. According to him, she's told him that my refusal is tearing the family apart, and that she simply can't stay married to someone whose child is so cruel. Oh, the drama. What really floored me was my dad's tone. He wasn't mad, he was pleading. He said he didn't want to lose her, that she's been so good to him, and that he's never been happier. "She's so wonderful, especially after what I went through with your mother," he said, as if I should be swooning over his newfound bliss. Wonderful? Seriously? This is the same woman who's been throwing me under the bus for years. The same woman who treated me like an afterthought while parading her daughter around like the second coming of Grace Kelly. But sure, Dad, tell me more about how great she is. I tried to keep my composure and pointed out that Bella had disinvited me from her wedding. A wedding, I might add, that ended with her husband catching her locking lips with his best friend. A wedding that I never wanted anything to do with in the first place. But now I'm supposed to feel bad enough to pay off her half of the costs? But my dad just waved it away, saying Bella has been under a lot of pressure and probably didn't mean it. "You know how weddings are," he added. Oh, totally, Dad. I definitely know how stressful it is to accuse someone of flirting with your fiance and then kick them out of your big day. So relatable. When I told him I wasn't going to help, his entire demeanor changed. Suddenly, the kind, pleading tone was gone, and he looked at me like I'd insulted his entire existence. "Your stepmother was right about you," he said. "You're bitter. You've always been jealous of Bella. You're probably happy or life is falling apart." I didn't even bother responding at that point. He got up, left the house, and I haven't heard from him since. I guess he made his choice. He's sticking by the woman who's been undermining me for years and the stepsister who treated me like dirt, all while accusing me of jealousy. And apparently, I'm the problem in all of this. My 24 male brother, 28 male, has shared custody of his sons, 5 and 6, with his ex. He has them 1 week on, 1 week off. My brother dates a lot of people, and usually what happens is they break up after 1 or 2 years of dating. This has happened 4 times since the kid's mom, and every time he introduces his new girlfriend to his kids after just a few weeks, and they move in together right away. As you can imagine, this is super hard on everyone, the family, my brother, and especially his sons. 2 years ago, my brother broke up with his girlfriend of 2 years and couldn't afford rent, so I offered him to move into my basement as I'm renting a 2-story house. I offered him an all-inclusive cheap rent, but I gave him strict rules because I don't like living with other people and never wanted a roommate. Within the first few weeks, all the rules had been broken. Also, his sons kept coming upstairs for a few hours every day. So I raised his rent. It was still less than 1/3 of what I was paying for the whole place. My parents went off on me and told me to cut him some slack. I insisted he start looking for his own place. He said he was okay with the rent increase and he'd do better with the rules. He wanted to stay. 2 weeks later, about a month after moving in, he had his new girlfriend move into the basement with him. I was furious. There was also a lot of unapproved and not housebroken pets that somehow made their way in. Fast forward to today. He just broke up with his girlfriend and can't afford his rent on his own and said he's moving back in without even asking me. My whole family is saying, "You don't use your basement anyways, and he can't afford to live anywhere, so you have to let him back in." I want to help as much as possible, so I said yes, but I said he'd have to be better with the rules and pay his rent on time. Forgot to mention last time there were a couple of months where he didn't pay, and he owes me a lot of money for other things. Now, here's the kicker. His sons start school 1 hour after my brother leaves for work and finish 3 hours before my brother is back, and he just expects me to babysit them during this time. I don't know what to do because he doesn't have any money for childcare, nor for his own rent, so I can't possibly say no, but I don't want to do this, especially not for free. Am I the a-hole for wanting to say no to the childcare? Am I being too hard on him? I know it's my unclely duties to be there for my nephews, and it's my brotherly duty to be there for my brother, but is there a limit? Not the a-hole, not even close. Your family is taking advantage of you. His poor choices are not your responsibility to correct. It's okay to say no and to refuse to yet again bail him out of his own mess. If your family is so insistent on helping him, let them do it themselves. You're the a-hole to yourself to let him move back in. He's a user, and you're his doormat. Of course you have to say no to childcare. And of course he and the family will make you do it. Look into his school for any before and after school programs, and make your brother pay for it. And make him pick the kids up and drop them off. Or he can't move in. End of. Not the a-hole, but grow a damn backbone and say no. When my husband and I were conceiving our son, 2.5, we struggled and were told we had a very low chance of getting pregnant naturally. I was gutted, and mother-in-law offered to pay for IVF. It took a couple rounds, and she did allow us to pick who we felt was the best doctor, despite him charging the most. She insisted that it was a gift, and we didn't need to even attempt to pay her back. My mother-in-law decided to come to our state last week to finally meet him. We just aren't close, so she had never gotten around to it. The moment she arrived, she tried to pick him up, and he didn't like that. I explained that she is a stranger, and we teach him consent, so in the future if she wants to touch him, she needs to ask. Mother-in-law immediately told me that was so weird, and do I make my husband ask every time before he touches me? During her visit, we had issue with boundaries. She wants to post pictures on social media, and when I told her no, she got huffy. I asked her not to video chat her husband in the living room due to the language he was using. Mother-in-law told me I was overreacting because their contractor just broke their glass sliding doors, and it is perfectly normal to call him a ducking idiot. She also kept sighing and saying I'm too strict or too mean. The final straw was when she snuck my son some of her Starbucks drink, loaded with sugar and caffeine. I told her not to, and she was like, "Ugh, mommy is so mean." I lost it and said if she can't respect that this is my house, my son, and my rules, she's never coming back, and that she owes me an apology for all of the eye-rolling and small aggressions. Mother-in-law yelled that she gave me tens of thousands of dollars to have a child, and I can't let her act like a grandma for 4 days. She then got a tone and was like, not to mention, I bought this house. Down payment. She said she probably won't see him for another couple of years because she is busy, so why can't she have fun for 4 days? I said she might never see him again if she doesn't respect me, and it is her fault if she never sees him. She lives like 7 hours away. No one ever said she couldn't come. Mother-in-law said I'm ungrateful, and if someone paid for her IVF, she would let them do almost whatever. Everyone I talk to thinks I'm in the wrong. My husband backed me to her, but doesn't seem to really support me. Not the a-hole. You sound like you gave fairly reasonable rules to protect your toddler. Who gives caffeine and sugar to a toddler? However, it may have been better to lay ground rules at the start of the visit calmly and firmly with your husband, and then reminded mother-in-law politely throughout rather than flying off the handle, although I fully see why you were mad. There's a picture of some kid getting disgustingly licked by a farm animal and a caption of, "Must not be the firstborn child because mom reached for the camera instead of the kid." You were doing a very typical overprotective first child thing, but unless you learn to loosen up, you're going to turn into one of those helicopter parents that smother their kids. With the exception of granddad swearing, the things you described as unacceptable are normal grandparent stuff, especially the photos on social media. She wants to share her wonderful grandson with everyone, but no, because reasons. Overall, it feels like you specifically treated your mother-in-law as an untrustworthy stranger from the start of the visit, instead of a family member who cares. And given that she went well above and beyond to help you bring your child into the world, you majorly snubbed her. You're the a-hole. All the people saying she's holding it over OP that mother-in-law paid for IVF. Mother-in-law didn't bring it up until she was threatened with never seeing the kid again. I really have to wonder about the circumstances surrounding this story. Mother-in-law seems incredibly generous and attempted to spend time with and spoil her grandkid. The Starbucks drink scenario would piss me off too, but the rest seems way over the top. You're the a-hole. My wife's great-grandparents were missionaries in China. My wife's grandmother had a number of keepsakes from her travels, including a beautiful Chinese painting that hung in her house. Ever since childhood, my wife had loved that painting. I remember spending our first Thanksgiving when we were dating at her grandmother's, and her talking about how much she loved it. About 5 years ago, my wife's grandmother's health started to decline. The family, me, wife's sister and her husband, wife's father, helped her move into an assisted living facility. Because it was a small apartment, my wife's grandmother gave many treasured items to her son and grandchildren. Knowing how much my wife liked the painting, her grandmother gave it to us. About a year later, my wife's grandmother passed away. Her will did not mention the painting or any of the other items she gave away during the move. We hung the painting over our living room couch, and my wife loved it. Tragically, my wife passed away from cancer last month. Due to virus, we had a very small funeral. It was the hardest Christmas I ever faced, though both her and my family were supportive. It may sound cheesy, but the painting helped. Knowing how much my wife loved it, it helped me to feel like she is still around in spirit when I was sitting on our living room couch by myself. About a week ago, my wife's sister came over to pick up a few small items she had lent my wife. She saw the painting and asked me if I would give it to her to keep in the family. My wife had some fertility issues, and as a result, we don't have any children, though we had started the adoption process when she got her cancer diagnosis. I told my sister that the painting was an important reminder of my wife, and I wanted to keep it, though I would be happy to will it to her children when I died. Her sister said that I might change my mind if I remarried and had children of my own, and it would be better to give it to her now. She also said that her grandmother wouldn't have wanted me to keep it. I said I would think about it. I think she could tell how painful it was because she didn't push the issue any further. Since then, my wife's father is called, and while he didn't focus on it, he did mention he wanted to keep the painting in the family. However, the thought of giving it away feels a bit like losing my wife again. Am I the a-hole for keeping the painting? Not the a-hole. Legally, I'm pretty sure the painting is yours now, as it was your wife's, and since she sadly passed, her belongings are yours as the survivor partner. Also, it's been a month since it happened, and these people want to take the painting? Like, did they forget about the person wife? Talk about being insensitive. Do what you think your wife would have done with the painting. If that is to keep and treasure it, so be it. Also, this might hurt, but from the comments they said they don't consider you family. So reflect on that too. Against the grain, you're the a-hole. It's sweet to have that reminder, but you were not the only person to lose your wife, or her grandmother, and your wife was not the only child to grow up with that painting in her childhood home. This is a family heirloom. It is very reasonable of her family to want it back. And no, I'll will it to your children is not enough. If I were the sister, I would want my kids to grow up with the painting in their home just like I did, as a reminder of the legacy of their great-grandmother. If you give it to one of them in 30 to 50 years when you kick the bucket, it won't have the same emotional connection. I get that you are hurting and don't want to let go of anything that reminds you so strongly of your wife, but you need to find other ways to keep her memory alive, because this one is selfish. I can't believe the not the a-hole judgments were because it's legally your painting. This is am I the a-hole, not am I legally allowed to be an a-hole. My partner and I have been together for 8 years, and we've been trying for a baby for just over 5 years. We were given the sad news that IVF was our only chance to have a child, and so this meant that we had to save up a large sum of money to do a big move so we could access IVF clinics more easily, as well as saving for the actual cost of IVF. Within 2018 and 2019, we fell into a lot of financial hardship and money troubles. This was due to myself losing a job, medical appointments, and fertility treatments costing a lot. My partner losing hours at work, and other big costs that hit us. During this time, we were sleeping on just a mattress on the floor, and I was looking to utilize the interest-free finance deal to purchase a bed, but unfortunately, due to my lack of work, I couldn't qualify for the GEM MasterCard, and my partner already had a MasterCard from years earlier. I couldn't afford to purchase the bed outright at the time. My friend perked in and said that she could get the card under her name, and I just paid it off like it was mine over the 60-month interest-free loan term. The thing was, I could afford to pay the repayments monthly. I just could not qualify to get the card to begin with. This discussion with my friend was lengthy. We spoke in detail about everything, and we spoke over a couple of months about it before we went through with the transaction. As per our agreement, I have paid it off consistently since then, and there is still 48 months out of 60 months to go. Fast forward to now. My partner and I have been doing well financially. We've both had consistent work, and we have finally managed to save around $10,000 for us to move towns and pay for IVF treatment. Recently, I mentioned this to my friend. A few days have passed since then, and she has now messaged me and asked that I pay the account off in full. She said that she'd thought I'd have paid the card off by now, and my response was that I'd been paying off the amount we agreed on consistently, and reminded her of the 60-month term she agreed to and signed up for. It's only been 12 months. She feels as though I am holding her back for the next 48 months that are left, and her words were, "I have a life too." She believes that I am not being compassionate about the situation after I said I cannot give her the money up front, and that I would stick to our agreement and continue to pay the card off. She pulled the, "You're supposed to be my friend and you don't care about me or my feelings. I'm bawling my eyes out right now because I am under so much pressure." Am I an a-hole for refusing to pay off this card completely when we both agreed that I'd pay it over 60 months? Am I an a-hole for refusing to give up my money to pay for IVF to have a child I've gone through hell and back to have for over 5 years? You're the a-hole. Yeah, technically you're in the right. You made an agreement for 60 months, etc. But you're being a huge a-hole. You have $10,000 saved up now, but from your friend's perspective, for 2 years, you were in such a bad way that you couldn't even afford a bed. She did you a huge solid by letting you take the card out. Pardon me, she took the card out in her name. And now you have money, you're sitting on it. And she's still dealing with the stress of, if my friend, for whatever reason, isn't able to pay this, I'm legally responsible for it, and it's going to ruin my credit. You're being a real bad friend here. And honestly, if you're not in a good enough place to pay off a ducking bed, you're definitely not ready for the financial strain that a child represents. You're the a-hole. You went into 5 years of debt to buy a bed when you already had financial hardship. There is surely a happy medium between mattress on the floor and asking your friend to incur a 5-year debt. Now your financial situation has changed, yes? You should pay it off and make sure you're debt-free as much as possible before starting your family. You're the a-hole. I get that having a baby is a priority for you. That said, your friend went out on a limb for you, risking her credit history. You now have $10,000 in savings? Not really. You have debt and a credit card that's in your friend's name. So that money you saved isn't really all yours. The money you charged on that credit card isn't free money. You can easily stick her with the rest of the bill and just move away because it's in her name, which would be such an awful thing to do. How expensive of a bed did you get? Moderately affordable king-size beds can go for $1,200 to $1,500 on sale. You can pay that off easily and still have money to move and pursue IVF treatment. Pay your friend off. It's the right thing to do, and you want good karma. You don't need this hanging over your head. My old school friend, Jim, lost his job late last year, and I lent him a couple of $1,000s, with the thought that he'd use it to help him pay for rent, groceries. At the time he lost his job, he was engaged to be married, and I fully expected that he would postpone the wedding until he got a new job and paid me back. But now I've been told he and his fiance are going to get married at their friend's country house in a couple of months. My friend has yet to pay me back, and I want to ask him for the money back. I also am offended that he hasn't asked me to be one of his groomsmen. I've since spoken to him via text and made it clear that I expect him to pay me back before his wedding. It's hard to tell tone over text, but he seemed upset. I feel like he is taking advantage of my friendship and kindness. I have bills to pay too. Am I the a-hole for demanding my friend pay me back before he goes ahead with his wedding? You're the a-hole. Never lend money you can't afford to be a gift. You can't demand someone postpone their wedding for something you didn't even set terms on. You assumed. He's living his life. Present him with a repayment schedule if you're so bothered by it. Also, you're the a-hole. I'm offended he hasn't asked me to be a groomsman. Why would he? So he can hear all about how you lend him some money and hold it over his head then too? You're the a-hole. His life and his wedding don't revolve around you and your loan. It doesn't sound like you established a specific timeline for him to repay the loan when you gave him the money. Also, don't loan family and friends money that you can't afford to lose. They were already engaged before he lost his job and may have already paid deposits or fully for catering, photographer, and etc. Venue is free and in-laws could be paying for the wedding. Absolutely a lovely gesture that you lent him the money, but you can't expect him to put his wedding on hold till he pays you back. It makes you the a-hole.